On today's Ask Zach, we're going to look at one of the greatest B-bender innovators of all time and one of my favorite players, Albert Lee. Well, hello friends, and welcome to Ask Zach. Today we're going to look at one of my favorite players of all time, and if you've watched the show for any length of time, you know that Albert Lee is the reason that I started playing Telecasters and the reason that I got a B-bender in the first place. And today we are going to take a deep dive into his B-bender style, which is really unique. And to do that, we are going to look at a couple of his B-bender solos. So we're going to look at C'est La Vie by Emmylou Harris. We're going to look at Don't Cheat in Our Hometown by Ricky Skaggs. And we're also going to look at Pancho and Lefty by Emmylou Harris, all that feature Albert playing pull string or B-bender. And yeah, I'm going to show that off. Going to show off some of the shapes he uses. And let's say you're not a B-bender guy. Well, I mean, this may make you want one. Or you may take these solos and learn how to play them with hammer-ons or manual bends. So regardless, I think this is a great, kind of lesson and thing to work on. Also going to talk a bit about his history and how he got on the B-bender and what kind of bender he's used through the years and his gear. All right. So before we dive in, a quick pause for the cause. I just want to thank my Patreon members. I want to thank everyone that supported me just by putting money in the tip jar or giving me a thumbs up, wrote a nice comment or whatever. I really appreciate it. I read all the comments and thank you. All right, let's dive in. So Albert was aware of Clarence White, in the late 60s and his B-bender thing, and also he had heard Buck Trent, who was a banjo player, an electric banjo player that had like benders and Keith's, Scruggs pegs and all that stuff, who did some very bender sounding stuff. And also he talks about in one of his instructional videos, he talks about Carl Perkins having this little lever on the neck that up here by the headstock that he would bend up the B string a whole step. So he was kind of exposed to those things, and then he was in a wonderful band called Head, Hands, and Feet while he was still living in the UK. And on one of their first trips to the US, he bought a B-bender. So at the time, there was a cat named Dave Evans who would sell these butcher block bodies that already had his bender system in it. And so you would buy the body with the bender in it, and then you would put whatever neck and hardware and pickups and everything on there. And Evans is a really important guy because, and I did a whole video on him, but in a nutshell, he was the first one to take the entire bender mechanism and put it in the guitar. So before, with Clarence White or Bob Warford, those guitars, the mechanism stuck out, and they had to have little shells on the back of the body that made it thicker. Clarence's was quite significant, and Bob Warford's was thinner, so that Bob's would actually fit in a regular Fender case. The Clarence White guitar will not ever fit in a Fender case. So, Albert bought his Evans pull string, as he called it, and he put a rosewood board Telecaster neck and, regular kind of, Telecaster hardware. And he ended up having a humbucker in the neck position, and then later on it got a rosewood board Strat neck, and then he had the mechanism taken out of the Evans butcher block body, and I'm guessing because it was heavy. Now I owned one of these Evans pull string butcher block bodies at one point, and it was very heavy, and it was not really fun to play for any length of time just because it was a boat anchor. So I'm guessing because of that, he had the mechanism removed and he had it put in a Phil Kubicki Tele. So Phil did the work. And of course, Phil had worked for Fender back in the 60s and then started making Fender type bodies in the 70s, and he would make whole guitars. And so he made this blackguard looking instrument that he took the Evans pull string out of the butcher block body, put it in the Kubicki guitar. And that guitar had a full-size humbucker in the front, a Strat pickup in the middle, and a regular, Tele style bridge. I believe they were all Seymour Duncan pickups. And he used that a lot. So it's in the Starlix video that he did, and that's what he used on a lot of records that he played on. So, like Patty Loveless and Carlene Carter, and you can hear also that he really got into using kind of the Stratty sound of using the back two pickups on that guitar, and then later on he started using some chorus and things like that, which kind of led into him getting into Music Man guitars, and them eventually making him a one-off Bender Albert Lee signature model guitar that he used. Probably the most prominent, the easiest to find footage of him using that guitar is there's a Emmylou Harris and the Hot Band reunion show from the 90s where Albert's playing in the band with Rodney Crowell, and he's using that guitar with the Music Man B-Bender on it. All right. Then as far as, like effects and stuff like that, he mainly used an Echoplex or a Lexicon PCM42 for delay. Later on, he got into the Korg A3, which he still uses to this day. Amp-wise, he's always been a Music Man guy or Fender, and he usually used HD 130s with either JBL or EV speakers. So he likes that really fast attack and high dampening factor, and that's, kind of part of his sound. He's not really into old Jensen or Celestion speakers. So, all right, enough tone talk. Let's talk about the playing. So here we go. So we're going to start off with C'est La Vie, which is a tune off the Luxury Liner album by Emmylou Harris. And he's using a pull string, and in fact he's not using the Butcher Block one because his Butcher Block guitar was stolen. Now, it was later gotten back, but it was stolen, and he ended up using Bob Warford's guitar on the whole record. So he used it on the B-Bender cuts on the record, which are C'est La Vie and Pancho and Lefty. So, interesting factoid. So let's just play the C'est La Vie, and it basically uses two different shapes. It uses what I would call a D7 shape like this, but you're just using the two high strings, or you have this kind of G5 shape where you're just barred across on the E and B strings. So those are the shapes that are in this solo. So it starts off, it's in the key of B flat, but the solo is mainly in F over the 5 chord. So it starts way up here and over this kind of F7 shape up here, and it just goes like this. Fun little thing. And then at the end, of course, you have the double stop, and it gets onto some of the other strings. But here, I'll play it again a little slowly. We've got a little fuzz on here. That's interesting. All right, let's do this again. So of course at the end you get the where you have to kind of cover the also the G string with this, again, this D7 kind of shape, but of course we're playing a B flat 7. And then you have that common kind of barred across here, on the 8th fret, and then barred at the 6th fret, and then you hammer on that G string up to the up to the 7th fret, and then you hit that last 8th fret on the D string. So that's C'est La Vie, and I think that's a really good kind of intro to bender lick, and because it only has really 2 different shapes, and you can kind of work on that. I learned the solo before I had a bender, and I had actually ordered a bender from Joe Glazer, sent my Tele off, and I learned it, doing manual bends, and then of course it was a lot easier to do with the B bender. Then it was about learning how to use the mechanism. But I think it's a really great solo. All right, next, let's move on to Ricky Skaggs' "Don't Cheat in Our Hometown." And that's an interesting record. Of course, it's of course, we're talking about the title cut. But the album itself part of it was recorded in the 70s with the Hot Band, with Emmylou's band, like Albert Lee, John Ware, Hank DeVito, Emory Gordy Jr., etc., Glenn D. Harden. And then part of it was recorded with Skaggs' road band from the early 80s, which would have had like Bruce Boughton and Ray Flack. So it's a real interesting record. Originally, Ricky had cut, the stuff with Emmylou for the Sugar Hill record label, which was a small independent, kind of bluegrass label. And he ended up playing them for an executive at CBS Epic, now you'd call him Sony. And he signed him right away, and so he, of course, moved on to a major label. They didn't use any of those tracks on his first 2 albums, and then on the 3rd album, they did a licensing agreement with Sugar Hill for those tracks that had been cut with the Hot Band, and then they added these additional tracks with his road band at the time. So, great album, and this cut, of course, features the Hot Band and Albert Lee on guitar, and he does a really, really cool intro. This song is in the key of F, and it starts on the 4 chord, which is the B flat, and it starts with this arpeggio. So let's just do that. Let's see. And it's using 3 different bender shapes. So you have kind of like your D7 shape like we used. It has your, barring the 2, on the same fret on the E and B. And then it also has this kind of D shape, not D7, like this, just on the high 2 strings. So, and it starts off with a B flat, basically inversion. You kind of slide up, and it's this. Like a C chord, but your low note is on the 13th fret. But we're not going to use that. We're just going to use the part that's on the D, G, and B strings. So you get this. And then we start with the bender. So here we're going back and forth between the 3 shapes. So, again, really fun, great sounding solo. And one of the fun things to do on this was I started playing it just using hammer-ons, just to hear what it would sound like. And it sounds like this. And as I played it, I thought, that sounds like Floyd Cramer, which of course Floyd Cramer had that slip note style where he was trying to sound like a pedal steel. So it's kind of fun to take any of these licks and do them with hammer-ons or do them with manual bends, So it can be done. So, but the mechanical bender has a certain sound. It's just, and I like it. But I think it's fun to do because not all the time do I play a B bender guitar, and so sometimes I'll want to do a bender licks or a bender solo, like Peaceful Easy Feeling or what have you. And, I'll do it manually as much as I can. So you can't hit all of the notes sometimes. All right. So that was Don't Cheat in Our Hometown by Ricky Skaggs. Finally, we're going to go to a little bit, probably the most advanced of the three, and that is Emmylou's recording of Pancho and Lefty by Townes Van Zandt. Again, off the Luxury Liner album, again using Bob Warford's B-Bender guitar. Albert, of course, is using Bob's guitar. And this uses another shape that's really useful, and that's where you have, let's say we're in the key of G, you would have your first finger on the 3rd fret of the E string, and then on the B string, you're on the 6th fret, and you have this thing. So what you're doing is you're bending. It's bending into a unison. So you have your B string is playing an F, and then it's bending up to a G. And it's a cool shape to use. And so let's go into the key of C, where Pancho and Lefty is, and the solo starts on the 4 chord on the F, and so it goes like this. So he uses that shape where the fingers are basically 3 frets apart, and where you get these unison bends, and he uses them in a really cool way, from the beginning till almost the end. So again, I'll play it a little slower. So, there you have it. Another one of my favorites, and it really utilizes that other shape where you're getting those unison bends. I really like just really, really great moves. It's also interesting to see there's footage of Albert playing with the hot band, doing Pancho and Lefty, using his regular straight up 53 Tele that of course does not have a bender on it. And he does some very similar things, but he also kind of plays it differently because he's not using a bender. One of the interesting things about Albert is Albert really didn't like to really tour with the B-bender, and he mainly used the B-bender in the studio. And he liked live to play a regular Tele, of course, in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and then, of course, the Music Man. And he felt like the B-bender had a negative effect on his guitar playing because he became dependent on it. But that's kind of the point, is to really be good at the B-bender, it kind of becomes part of your style. So I understand the rub of what Albert is saying, but still, it's kind of a interesting thing there. All right, here we'll talk a little bit about what I'm using today. Of course, this is my Glaser Glaser Bender guitar, and it's got 3 Seymour Duncan pickups in it. This is the 53 tapped Tele set from the custom shop that you can find there, and I'm in the tapped position, so it's like 6.8K or something like that. And I was using that, and I was blending in, because this is the Music City Bridge blend system, And so I'm blending in just a little bit of this middle pickup, which is this is the Duncan Hot Strat stack. And this is a bridge model that's been wired top coil only. And I just blended in a little bit of that just to kind of soften the attack a little bit and make it a little smoother, like Albert's tone was, even when he didn't have a middle pickup. And then I'm using, effect-wise, I'm using a touch of compression from a Mirage compressor, and I'm using some slapback from an old Boss DM3 that I've had forever. And then I'm using my regular amp, which is a Headstrong Little King, little 12-watt model with a 12-inch Alessandro 64 speaker by Eminence. So that's it. And then for those that are counting, I'm still using these D'Addario XS strings. So now this guitar has had 3 gigs down in Florida. It's had 2 sessions, and then I did another session. So now it's had 3 sessions, and it's done 2 Ask Zach episodes. So there you have it. So at what point will he change the strings? This is becoming like a Seinfeld episode, like where they try to see how far they can go without running out of gas. All right, well, we've gone long enough. We've had a lot of fun. Oh, and there's a Spotify playlist for Albert Lee and it's just Bender stuff, and you'll love it. So find the link in the description, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.